I'd like to call to order the Redistricting Committee for Wednesday, October 6, 2021. The time is 3:03 p.m. First item, roll call.
Randy Udell.
Present.
Susie Gennon.
Present.
Greg Jones.
Present.
Huma Hassan.
Present.
Bill Kanzimas.
Present.
Jean Musser.
Present.
And Wendy Hathaway is absent with excuse. We also have in the room Mayor Aaron Richardson, our Community Development Planner Wade Thompson, our City Administrator Chad Brecklin, and myself, Tracy Oltenberg, the City Clerk. And you have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you, Tracy. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the October 4th, 2021 draft minutes?
I move approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Very good. Discussion? Yes, go ahead, Gene.
Minutes don't reflect the question that I raised about the effect of adding a ward to District 1 and what effect that might have on the racial makeup of District 1.
Thank you. I can go ahead and amend those.
Thank you.
Okay. So am I issuing an amendment to that then as well, speaking to it?
We can just do it as a friendly amendment.
Okay, very good. Is there further discussion then? Hearing none, we'll place it to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Item 5, review of Dane County Tentative Supervisory Plan. I will turn it over now to city staff. Tracy, did you want to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Udell. In your packet materials, this is not in the public packet, but in your paper materials, I have included a guideline, a timeline that shows basically what we're under as far as the adoption and why. It's all stemming from the publication of the notice to the newspaper and the first day to circulate nomination papers of December 1st. So that's why we're under this accelerated timeline. Also in your packet that was not included last meeting is option A from the county. That's one of the options that they're looking at as far as the supervisory districts. And there's also option C and option G.
On the computer as well, if folks want to view them on the screen.
Thank you. And these options are also included in the packet materials to the public as well as on our website for viewing.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Gene,
Just
go
a
ahead.
question for Tracy. Do any of these three options vary in the implications they have for how our wards and districts are drawn, or do they not have any implication in that regard?
Yeah, and I can turn that over to Wade.
Yep. Yeah, so there's basically three options. Two of them are the same as it relates to the impact on the city. One is different. The options that we have created can accommodate either county scenario with very minimal impact to our options.
Thanks.
Any other questions at this time for discussion? Hearing none, we will move to item 6 on the agenda, review ward and Aldermatic district maps. And again, I will turn it over to city staff to discuss our options.
Yep, so I'll jump in on this as well. Thank you, Chair Udell. Also in your packet, and these are viewable to the public as well, is the current City of Fitchburg Aldermatic districts and wards, and it also shows the 4 polling locations within the city. And the second map shows the school districts within the city. These are all things that are taken into consideration when Wade is drawing his mapping as well.
At this point, do we want to discuss the options, or do we want to discuss anything that you just mentioned? Is there any questions from the commission?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I have questions about the timeline here again. Where is that? I think you put out a timeline here that said that the reason why we need to have a decision made is because ultimately, it looks like there's the first day to circulate nomination papers is December 1st. Is that correct? Is that the reason why that there's this push for making a choice on this within the next, let's say, week or so? It seems like there's a push here to select, one of these options for redistricting. And is that the reason why? Because is that statutorily required? Or let's say if we still wanted more time as a committee to, seek more input or more public forums or get more information, if we were to somehow miss some of these deadlines, what would happen is my question.
I can't speak for why the county has put in a deadline of November 5th, other than they may have to go ahead and do the required notice postings like any other government entity when there's changes to their ordinances. So that would be my speculation there. And so because of that rather hard deadline from Dane County on November 5th, that is what's really forcing the local timeline to be highly compressed. So as you can see, when you look through this timeline here, what's working against us again is the census data was available on August 30th. The county narrowed their maps down to the 3 choices that were just shown to you on last week. So then obviously we've started to work through our maps this week because when I had looked at the original 8 options, I think there were at least 4, if not 5 different boundaries for supervisory districts within the city of Fitchburg. So it would have not really been feasible for us to beginning to present options based upon 5 potential scenarios. So hence why we are where we are this week. And what's also driving that is our ordinances require us to introduce a referral at a regular council meeting, that being the next one, October 12th, in order to meet timelines. And then, so that will at least get us that placeholder that there's an ordinance change coming to reflect the ward map redistricting process. And then we will have to we're required to post 2 notices of Class 2 caliber at least 2 weeks in advance of action on that ordinance. So since our council is calling a special meeting on November 2nd to ideally pass a ward map, we'll post that the week prior, which I believe is the 26th, and then the week before that, which is the 19th. So that's kind of how we're working to create the timeline that we're on. Does that answer your question?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Mm-hmm.
What if, I'm just asking, what if this committee can't decide and meet this timeline? What if we miss, let's say, what if it takes us until, let's say, November 19th to make a decision? That puts these timelines completely off, I'm just saying what if, and then
I don't have the answer to that question. I don't know if the county would arbitrarily draw word maps for us.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. What would happen?
Yep,
What would happen if we miss these deadlines? Is my question.
I don't know, but what I can tell you is when we asked the county if they had any flexibility with the deadline, they said that they really had little, if any, flexibility, and that we were the only municipality that had inquired if there was any flexibility on the deadline as well. So I don't know if the county has even made any sorts of contingency plans, because they're not really hearing from a lot of the municipalities that there's going to be significant problems in getting their maps done by the 5th.
Okay.
So-
I'm just curious about this
Fair
timeline, because it
questions.
seems like this
Absolutely.
timeline has
It's-
been talked about quite a bit in this, that
Yeah.
there's this rush, and we got,
Yeah.
we've got the census information late, and things have
Yeah.
started kind of late, and I think the last meeting, there was many people on this committee that had questions about, public forums, public comment, and, but also, I guess the ultimate idea is what is the ultimate scenario if we don't meet this December 1st this date, or whatever the date is, Is it a county, like you said, the ultimate result of this is if we don't meet it, is that we don't get to draw these maps. The county will draw the map for us? Is that the implication that you're saying?
I do not know what the implication is. I would be concerned that the implication is that the county draws the map for us.
Would just draw the map for us, because
Right.
we couldn't make a decision on that.
Right.
Thank you, that's what I was
And
wondering.
I think you also, sorry to interrupt, I think you also open yourself up to lawsuits. I think there's a lot of scrutiny in all this stuff, and if you're missing these things. And I know that for people who are up for election this spring, if they don't know even what district they might be in when they run for the election, and so it then starts throwing off the spring elections, because, if you live in this place and you think you're running for this district, and it all of a sudden becomes a different district, then essentially you might not be able to take, if you win an election, you might not be able to take that role either. So that there's unfortunately a lot of things with the elections that are part of it as well.
Can I ask a question? That relates to the first day of circulation nomination papers.
Yeah, that's,
Right?
yep,
Those people that are running for some council member position would need that by December 1st, is why.
yep, yeah.
But I guess I would comment that, well, what you just talked about were administrative issues related to the electoral process. That's how I would see it. The issue for me would be, is it more important to have viable maps and lines in place that meet the constitutional, U.S. constitutional guidelines, principles, as opposed to a timeline driven by local political processes? That's kind of a rhetorical question. I look at this saying, asking myself the following: is it more important to follow these stated dates for purposes of the county's role of meeting the electoral guideline, dates and polling places and candidate districts and so forth, as opposed to the rights and responsibilities of individual citizens? I'm more concerned with having lines in place at all levels so that our citizens' needs are met. That's kind of my thought on it.
Moving on, is there any additional discussion? Hearing none. Do we want to speak to the items under item 6 then further? Wade, at this point?
Yeah, and I can, again, just kind of rehash where we were the other day and kind of where we're at today. So hopefully folks have a pile of paper in front of you with 3 options, as well as 3 city options, as well as the county options. So I just want to quickly review those options. There is some new information on there, so we'll talk about that as well. So starting with option 1, and we do have stuff on the screen too if folks want to look up there. But again, this is an option that we discussed at our previous meeting. I think I might have made a minor tweak to the Ward 5 and 6 boundary, which separates District 1 and 2. And that was based on a suggestion, as discussed at the last meeting, just making that line a little bit more linear and following neighborhood boundaries. I believe that's the only major change that was made to this option from when it was presented at the last meeting. But I do also want to point out we have additional information related to how this plays out with districts. Now, again, we're talking about creation of wards, and then multiple wards create districts. So that previous map obviously showed the wards, but it was kind of hard for some folks and me as well to conceptualize what that means in terms of districts. So what we prepared for you today is a map of how these wards would play out as it relates to districts. So in the upper left-hand corner, that is District 1, proposed District 1 in this option, wards 1 through 5. Moving to the east, District 2 consisting of wards 6 through 10. District 3, moving east, composed of wards 11 through 14, and also to include Town of Madison annexation population to get that to five wards within that district. And then District 4, in the blue, covers a good chunk of our, I guess, the southern half plus of our city. So again, hopefully that helps folks better conceptualize how those wards would look as it relates to districts. Now, there was also a request to provide further detail on some demographic data, both within those proposed wards and proposed districts. So the third page is just that. And this comes straight from the census data from the software I use to create maps. But we essentially have wards, ward numbers, population, population over 18, and then various demographics of that population. So we have those numbers by wards, and we also have them totaled by districts. So you'll see in the gray, kind of the gray horizontal lines, those are the total demographic details per these proposed districts. Now, we also had a request for some 2010 data. I don't quite have the level of data that I have in 2020, but I do have data at the district level. So what you see on the bottom of that page is our demographics in 2010 as it relates to that, as it relates to those districts. And I think what might be best is for me to just run through all options. Certainly I can answer any technical questions, but maybe give you the big picture, and then we can come back and pick at each one of these options.
Well, I was going to propose that since you've opened up the door to talk about the data and the 2010, 2020, if you could answer a couple of questions.
Certainly.
Based on Monday's data set that you gave us and comparing that with today's data set. So when I looked at your numbers for Monday, and I tried to just kind of get a sense of, let me just get myself organized here, of what the ward data, population, white, black, and Hispanic, I didn't go much deeper than that, but I will. I wanted to know the percent of racial ethnic groups by ward and then by districts. This is what I found, and you tell me if I'm reading this right. In Ward 1, it had a total population of 1,945. Now, and that's a little bit different than what you got today, right?
Are you talking 2010 or
2020.
Okay, so in this proposed option 1, Ward 1 does have 1,945 people.
All right,
Yep.
so we're looking at the same data set. And the black population, white population, and Hispanic population, for me, it's the percent of representation in each ward that determines, in my mind, whether or not there is balance, so to speak. Does that make sense so far?
Fair point. I would take a bigger picture and look at the wards as they relate to the broader district. And Tracy, feel free to chime in, but districts are the electoral units.
Okay.
Wards are not electoral units.
But I can't live in a district, I live in a ward where I reside. Am I saying that right?
Think about,
home
you live in a
address
city
is
and then you
20
live in a
20
county, right?
Okay.
So you live in a ward and then you live in a district.
Okay.
Yep.
So bear with me while I do this, and I'll quickly get off of this, Mr. Chair. That for Ward 1, 48.64% of the residents and population were white, 22.47 black, 17.99 Hispanic. And I look at that to say, okay, now that's what we're showing in 2010. Now what I can't do is go back and look at that same comparison for 2010. That's what you don't have, right? That tells me that change in percent representation by ward or by district will determine what level of balance. When I say balance, I don't like using the word stacking and cracking and packing, all that good stuff, but you get my point.
I do. And to answer your point, we do have the data at a district level from 2010. So I didn't have time to do percentages or changes, but if you just looking at this page on the screen, as an example, in 2010, District 1 had, as an example, 1,223 people of black descent, or black demographic. I take that back. this proposed option has 1,223 black people in District 1.
And what's that percent?
I don't have that offhand. If someone has a
I can give it
calculator,
to
they
you.
could.
Oh, go ahead.
I can give it to you if you want to. I was doing this, this is what I was doing before the meeting.
Go for it.
Is it okay if I interrupt you?
Go ahead.
Okay. Am I on? Okay. So before the meeting, I took these percentages that Wade gave us here. And what I did from 2010 for District 1 is that I added up the minority population or diverse population. I added from on the columns Black, Hispanic, Asian, onwards. And so for District 1 for 2010, I got a total of 3,427 people. And then I divided that by the population of, in District 1, of 6,485. And I got, for District 1, in 2010, the diverse population was 52.84%. Now, District 2, I did the same thing, and I got a total of 1,106 people. And again, I divided that by the population of 6,318, and I got a total of 17.5% diversity in District 2. For District 3, I took, again, those same columns, and I added them, and I got 3,213 people divided by 6,307, and I got a population total of diversity of 50.9%. And now for District 4, the columns, I added them again. I got 1,059 people. And I divided that by 6,150, and I got 17.2% for District 4. So those are what I think are the demographics for diverse populations in 2010.
Right. And that same comparison or model ought to be done for 2020 so that you could see across time. And while I like that it's at a different level, for me, it doesn't answer the following question. I said I was coming to a question, right? So hopefully I can get it. And I'm looking at the ward data because we're going to draw lines that will determine all 19 or 20 wards once we get Madison in. Those lines are going to determine everything else, voting places and all that good stuff, right? So I'm looking at, number one, I'm looking at the 2020 data because I didn't have 2010, the representation of individual groups, blacks and Hispanics particularly, and I'm just going to make this observation. And if I look at Ward 4 for 2020, we have a white population of 30%, Hispanic population of 43.8%, 10% black. I'm going to be looking to see if that is, what was it in 10? Because if we have drawn lines to show that there's more movement of that population, the Hispanics, which would produce, theoretically, a situation that we would call stacking or packing. Does that make sense? So that's why I want to look at the 2010 numbers by ward and district, as well as the 2020. Last observation, as I look at the ward data, 2020 only, and all it did was drive more questions for just looking across the decade as the white population. And some of our wards, I have to say, are 4/5 white. Now, I'm not saying that negatively. That's just where people live. You know, 80% in certain wards and 90, well, almost 90%, and that's okay. But my concern looking at it is, as we look at the 2020 lines, the lines that we draw, if we're really following some of the data sets, data numbers that we have driven here. So I'll be looking to get all that 2010 stuff so that I can compare.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
All right, so before the meeting, I did it again because I was adding the two options that I kind of thought that we were kind of looking at that would be like option 1 and option 3. So I did the same totals for these options. So you want me to give them to you? All right, so again, I added the columns from the diverse populations of Black, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, so on, so on. So this is for option let's do option 1 first. Okay, we'll do option 1 that I did. Adding District 1 totals. The total diverse population for District 1 in option 1 is 4,426 people. And again, I divided that by the total population of this proposed alderman district, which is 7,794, and that gives us 56.78% diversity. For District 2, again, adding those numbers for diversity, we have 3,470, and then divide that by 7,726. That gives us a total percentage of diversity at 44.9% for District 2. For Alderman District 3, again, adding those columns, we get 2,510, and then divide by the total population of 7,743. That gives us a percentage of 32.4%. District 4, adding those columns, we get diversity of 1,510 people, divided by 7,736. That gives us 19.5%. And that's option number 1. Option number 3, I didn't do option number 2, okay? I just did option number, because I'll just tell you honestly, I really don't like option number 2.
But just clarification, you combined minorities together as
Yes,
opposed
I
to
did.
segregating.
I combined from the African-American population, or Black, Hispanic, Asian, onwards. And then, so let me give you just my totals for option 3, okay? All right, just so we have something to talk about. We have some numbers, all right? So District 1 is, adding those columns again, this is option 3, is 4,437 people, divide by 7,785. That gives you 56.99%. District 2, adding those numbers, is 3,429 people, divide by 7,724, gives you 44.39%. District 3, adding populations of diversity, gives you 1,281 people, divided by 7,729, gives you 16.57%. Okay? District 4, if you add populations of diversity, gives you 2,769 people, divided by 7,761, gives you 35.67. Thank you. Can I add just a few comments here?
If you'd like to, continue.
From what I can see from between option 1 and 3, I know we talked a lot about District 1 last time. Either one of these, the 1 or 3, has a diverse population of 56. One is 56.9 in option 3, and option 1 is 56.79. So District 1 still maintains their majority diversity population. And I think District 1 in 2010 was 52%. So there's an increase in diversity on both of these 4 percentage points there. District 2, when we look at the numbers, originally in 2010, it's looking at 17% diversity. So in both option 1 and option 3, looks like, yep, they look about right. They look at, one is 44.9%, one is 44.39%, so they're fairly close. And then District 3 in 2010 was around 50%. So now if we compare that to these two, District 3 has some some reduction. In option 3, it's gone down to 16.57%. And this one is option 1, it's gone down to 32.4%. So District 3 has, gone from 50.9%, which is somewhat majority, to, there's a significant on both of these reduction, but maybe that's just something to note. And then District 4, which was, District 4 was about 17% right now. It's gone up on this one to 35, and then on option 1 is 19. So those are some of my observations. Thanks.
Wade?
Yeah.
Further?
Thank you.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Yep, so that probably a good segue into option 2. And this option was presented as well at the last meeting. Just geographically speaking, I know there was some concerns, at least from a staff perspective, about kind of the non-compactness of this option. And I think that's probably better reflected in that Alder map that we've created. So again, we kind of talked about the horseshoe in District 4. I think it really becomes evident. And we talked about some of the reasons that horseshoe is inevitable. Per county draft districts, per some wards not having a lot of populations. This was just the way it played out. To be honest, I put this together at the last minute. I just wasn't happy with it. I wanted to do more work on it. So with that extra day, I was able to do more work on it. And that brings us to a new option that you've not yet seen until today, and that is an option 3. Now again, option 1, if we talk about Town of Madison absorption, option 1 puts it into District 3. Option 2 puts it into District 4. This option 3 also puts it into District 4, but in my opinion, does a better job at that compactness of a district. So, and we still meet all our criteria with equal populations and county lines and all those sorts of things. But again, I think this map up on the screen there kind of shows, again, that new option 3. And again, there still is, a little bit of a horseshoe aspect to it. But I think it's, in my opinion, geographic, a little bit more compact. Again, we still reach fairly far over to the west in District 4, and that's a result of the county supervisory lines, as well as this ward being very lowly populated, so it has to be geographically big from east to west. But again, I think this is an improvement, in my opinion, on option 2, and I think the numbers that Huma just spoke to, in terms of diversity can, reflect that as well. So those are the 3 options. We do, at the last minute, I did create an option 4. I believe you have a copy of that as well. I don't have it on my computer. So
okay. All right.
So if you think about 4 options and breaking them into 2 categories,
3.
with 2 of the options using District 3 to take the Town of Madison, and 2 of the options using District 4 to take Town of Madison, this would be the second option in which District 3 takes the Town of Madison. So geographically, in terms of how it looks, I think it looks very similar to option 1. Again, I haven't had a chance to run the numbers on it, but I would imagine that the numbers would come back in terms of demographics at a level similar to what option 1 has shown us. So again, as I think about how to organize these 4 options, again, I think options 1 and 4, which is the one you see in front of you, absorb Town of Madison into District 3, and I think are relatively, to the degree we can be compact geographically with our land base. It creates districts that do that. Options 2 and 3 take Town of Madison into District 4, and I think are a little bit more spread out as it relates to, again, kind of that compactness of our District 4. So, again, that's, I guess, the new information that we prepared since the last meeting, and certainly can discuss or take comments on any or all of that.
Now, just to clarify, may I?
Yes, you may.
Just
Go
clarify.
ahead.
So by incorporating or including Town of Madison in District 3, does that change the numbers?
Those are all,
Are they still equivalent? I think I missed that.
I mean, everything I've prepared for you includes the Town of Madison numbers. So when you see this chart and you look at, so I'm looking at option 1,
Okay,
and if you look at my table, our table,
yep.
and you look at, there's a ward number 20. You see that?
Not on my draft, it ends at District 18, Ward 19.
Right above the line that says District 3, do you see that?
I should be looking at option 1?
Yep.
Where's 20? Oh, okay, gotcha.
So that 20 is Town of Madison.
So you did include
So
it.
you follow that, you
Yep.
know, to left to right, and those will give you all the numbers, and they're included in our, I think probably the math that Huma did as well.
Greg, can I say something real quick?
Yes, you
Just
may.
to
Go ahead.
To Greg's point, I think he was wanting to know what is the difference for in 2010 for District 3, as it stands out, it's 50.9% diversity. Now, you're looking at option 1 was the question, is what's the difference? So you had 50.9% diversity, and now for option 1, it's gone down to 32.4%. Does that help?
Oh, no, that wasn't my question. That's a good point. No, now that Chad pointed it out, what I was asking was that for each district, we try to have an equivalent number of residents. Am I saying that right?
Correct.
That's what I was getting at. By including Town of Madison in District 3,
Yep.
does it change fundamentally those 4 numbers relating to the 4 districts?
Nope,
And your
so-
answer was no. I
Yep.
got you.
So our 2020 population is 29,609. The population that we'll get from Town of Madison is 1390. So that gives us a total population of 30,000, I think it's 999. So we divide that by 4, our 4 districts, and that gives us a desired equal population in each district of 7,750. So all the maps you've seen prepared before you, try to get as close as we can to 7,750 in each one of those districts, including Town of Madison population. Does that make sense?
Got it.
Gene, you have a question? Go ahead. You have the floor.
More a comment, I think, is just looking at option 3 and option 2, they both create that District 16 that kind of wraps around the top.
Yep.
I'd be inclined to just dismiss those 2 and either use 1 or 4. And I think that either 1 or 4 look pretty decent to me. I don't see that this, and I think the concern that I had about District 1, when you added a Ward 5, which was all white folks, it would dilute the diversity down, but the growth in Hispanic and Black populations in Wards 1 through 4 so overwhelmed that, and so it still remains a reasonable minority-majority district, if you want to look at it that way. So I think I view it as either 1 or 4 looks like they would be pretty acceptable to me. And between the 2, maybe 1's a little better, I suppose, because it gives Randy a little less distance to drive up there in the upper right corner. You know?
Okay.
But otherwise,
I'm going to do a lot of walking.
my view, I'm not making a motion, but that would be my view, either 1 or 4, and I don't see that it's hugely different which one it would be.
Randy, can I?
Yes.
Right, just thoughts.
Mayor Richardson, please. You have the floor.
Yeah, I agree with Gene. I think 1 and 4, to me, if I was looking at them, probably make the most sense to me. I do think that's great. District 1 continues to be what we've called in the past majority minority. I think obviously District 3 is not any longer, but I do think there is some value in District 2 and 4 becoming more balanced, so I think there is value in that. The only thing, and maybe I missed this yesterday during discussion, that would concern me just a little bit on both of these is essentially along Fish Hatchery Road. It seems like we're cutting out some parts of neighborhoods, specifically Tower Hill, like kind of on option 1, just below 8. You know, there's just like 3 streets of Tower Hill that aren't in that district, and that even a little bit above that. I think that's right along Mickelson Parkway there. And it's even a little bit better or worse, I don't know how you want to say that, in option 4. So that'd just be the one piece I see on there where it seems like we're cutting out a neighborhood, and it's probably for balancing.
Yep.
But it just, I know one of our ideas is to not cut neighborhoods apart, and that's just my concern, is if there's only 1 street or 2 streets in a neighborhood that aren't in that district, that there's some confusion there. But otherwise, I agree with Gene that 1 and 4, I think, are the best 2 options. Maybe also a slight favor for 1, but either one of them I think is great.
If I could just add on to the mayor's point, that's a really good, valid point. You know, basically what I was trying to do in this initial work is get as close to that equal population as possible. And that meant being pretty creative with these small areas. Now, legally, and I'm not a lawyer, but I believe there's precedent that we probably could get a little more unequal and still be legal, so to speak, if we really want to focus on keeping those neighborhoods whole. So I just want to point out, you know, my rationale for creating these maps as they are, but certainly if there's concern about a few specific areas, we could probably tweak those a bit and still be within that range of equal population. Do keep in mind that will likely create some, you know, some disbalance, but I think it'll be at a legally acceptable level, so.
Any further comments from, go ahead, Huma, yes.
So on option 1, I see that. I see that there's a little bit off of, I think it's Osmondson Road, if I'm correct, that's in the Seminole Forest neighborhood that will be in District 2 versus District 4. And then there's some of this on Lacey Road there, that's on, what would that neighborhood be? Yeah, I think it's the Wildwood neighborhood that would be in District 4. You know, I'm just wondering if it might be easier if you just take the line there from Osmondson for District 2 and just make it all red, make District 4 go all the way down to Osmondson, and then District 2 go all the way down to Lacey Road, and then up to Osmondson, if that would be, it just seems that'd be cleaner, you know?
Your suggestion is to complete the neighborhood, I guess, on Lacey, and then currently that line is on Osmondson, but I think the residents on the east side of Osmondson, the line is at the rear of their property, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and just,
This appears to be the center line of Osmondson. I could be wrong.
and that's where, again, you know, when I began this exercise, I tried to keep logical boundaries and coherent lines, but, you know, I mentioned yesterday or 2 days ago the butterfly effect, and, you know, like, it seems easy, and believe me, I've done it about 50 times, where you just change one thing, and then that ripples into all your other criteria. So, you know, again, certainly we can play around with a few things, but I do want to caution folks that there may just be some inevitabilities of either keeping neighborhoods whole or having a little bit more disequal population distribution.
Yeah, and I think that even that line with Osmondson actually runs down. There's some having walked it, portion of the left side of Osmondson goes into District 2, the left side meaning the west side. So it's a little skewed from 2010 as well. But that neighborhood to the right, Lacey, no, it's Wildwood, is whole in 2010. We're moving it a little bit for 2020. So, right or wrong, I'm just pointing that out.
And as you noted, Wade, there's statutory support or case law support for inequality in numbers to some degree.
Yep.
If there are other considerations that override that, so they don't have to be exactly equal.
Right.
I think as long as you're within the 10%, you're probably alive and well.
Is that the percentage? I mean, that was
That's
the
what
percentage
I've-
that was provided?
Everything that I've read and been presented on is a 10% range, yep.
Okay.
And we ought to certainly be able to stay well within the 10%, even if you adjust these neighborhoods.
So we, as a body, do have that option to make some suggestions of tweaking these.
Certainly.
Okay. I mean, if you get over to District 2, and as the mayor pointed out, just below the 8, which is the northwest corner of Fish Hatchery and Lacey, I mean, you do split up a neighborhood. Now, but if you go further, where that section that is on the west side of Fish Hatchery, I mean, I don't have as strong of objection to that portion there, because you go to further to the west of that road, you have the park. But at least to me, it's blatant. You're really splitting up the neighborhood when you go the one on the northwest portion of an intersection, and I think we should pull that back in a little bit and keep those neighborhood whole.
Randy, where was that one? Is that below 8, you said?
Yeah, just below the 8, and I don't remember what the name of that subdivision is, but it is the northwest corner of that intersection of Fish Hatchery and Lacey.
On option 4.
What's that?
Are you on option 4?
I'm sorry, I'm on option 1.
Oh,
On option 1, yeah.
And that is a good point, if there is consensus on tweaks that the committee would like staff to make, it probably would make sense to focus on a couple options as opposed to, well, again, whatever the committee decides, I'm just thinking about
Yeah,
timeline and,
no, exactly. And I just remember from the other afternoon when we met, there was and that all can change, but there was a larger majority that was in favor of option 1. Maybe that shifted to option 4. I've kind of gotten the impression that option 2 and 3 were not at the top of the list. I mean, we haven't taken a vote yet, but the last conversation was option 1, and that's the one I was working with. So, of trying to keep some neighborhoods whole.
Yep.
I think that's important. And the mayor pointed that out as well.
Yeah,
Kumar, go ahead.
I would agree with that. That is, because if you take that little bit, if you could move, I don't know how the numbers work out on this, but if you could take those two, I'm talking about option 1, and it says District 2, and you have a number 7 and number 8, and you have a kind of a blue area, which is District 4 goes into that, and then there's a little green area for District 3. If you could make that square, I don't know how the numbers work out.
Right.
Osmondson, and then cross down to Lacey, if District 2 could just come down to the corner of Osmondson and Lacey, and then go over to Fish Hatchery. I don't know if that would be possible, because that just seems like it'd be a nice square block.
And that's how it is now. I'm
Oh, is
sorry.
that how it is now?
Yes.
I was just going
Yeah.
to say that if you look on the current wards that they have, it actually shows how it currently is set up. And on all 4 of the options, that neighborhood is split up. So whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. So I think, just deciding which way you're going, because no matter what option you're looking at, right now, currently, they're all split up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to keep in mind, though, the west side of Osmondson down towards Lacey Road is in District 2. I mean, to me, it makes more sense to follow that
And
Osmondson Road.
just to add, that side of Osmondson is Madison School District. Typically, majority of people are in Madison School District. On the other side, on District 4, where it's bluer, is more Verona School District. So I think that would be, and be a good thing to have it kind of together, so then, because there's a lot of concerns with school districts, and even though it's not relevant to the city of Fitchburg, but it just seems like it would be
Well,
tighter.
it's relevant with ballots, correct? Yeah, and from a city clerk standpoint, administrative, if we chop that up, if we go with what we're discussing here, it makes the life a little easier for our city clerk. Yeah, and it just seems to make more sense, common sense, so.
assuming staff would proceed with exploring tweaks to, making things, keeping neighborhoods whole, is it and I will do my best to keep neighborhoods whole and keep equal population distribution.
Right.
But does the committee understand, and are they comfortable with the fact that in the course of keeping neighborhoods whole, there might be increases in disequal distribution of population?
Well, I'm concerned about whether these changes that we're talking about, a little bit of tweaks, which seem small, if they're going to affect the ward lines. And essentially, they will. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
If they affect the ward lines, and that basically goes to what we're talking about, either you keep neighborhoods and communities together or you don't. We may have to live with some of it, I understand. But if you do that, I would like for you to be able to show clearly the boundaries that are changed when we make those changes, those tweaks.
Yep.
All right.
Yes, go ahead, Chad.
I'm curious if at this point the committee is interested in at least narrowing down, the options, if they feel that they've at least seen out of the 4 options enough to consider potentially narrowing down to 1 or 2 options. And if we ultimately narrow down to 1, which it kind of seems like we are talking about tweaks to option 1 in particular, then we could potentially look at one narrowed down option for sure, and possibly a second narrowed down option where we could, kind of hone down modifications that this committee would like to see evaluated, and then go from there on those particular option or options.
Sure, I'll make a motion that we adopt option 1 with adjustments as needed by the staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Is there further discussion? Huma, go ahead.
I just wanted to have a comment that when we talked about the diversity, we're talking about the change with option 1 as it is right now. We have, I believe it is, not District 4, it's District 3 with option 1 currently is at 50.9% diversity. With option 1 is at 32%, so it is going to be losing a little bit, I just wanted to point that out. But it might be gained in other areas, but there is a decline there.
Yep, and it does gain in other areas, other districts.
Clearly about that change, and we can say diversity in general,
Yep.
but can you specifically say what that change is by racial ethnic group or composition?
I can talk in generalities, which I hope is specific enough at this point in time. Really what happened in District 3 and District 2 is traditionally, and let me get to the right option here on the screen. So if people are looking at option 1, we have a lot of diversity, I'm sure folks know this, in our North Fitchhatchee Road corridor, okay? So the area that I'm pointing to with my cursor, these areas were formerly, I believe, wards 10 and 11. They were in District 3. As a result of just, again, trying to equalize growth and create those really integrated districts, those areas are now proposed to be in District 2. So I would just generalize it as the diversity that was in District 3, per Huma's math, is now in District 2. Similarly, District 3 will pick up diversity in the town of Madison. So again, it's kind of a juggling act here, but, so even though one district may drop a little bit, you'll see a boost in another, and I think.
Can I give you a number?
Sure.
In your option 1, District 2, which was in 2010, District 2, where are we? District 2 was 17.5%. Now, with option 1, it picks up to 44.9%. So I think that's where the sort of the diversity has, even though we dropped from 50 to 32 with option 1, District 2 will be more diverse at 44.9%. So it puts us at, like, District 1 has a majority diversity at 56%. District 2 is not that far off at 44.9, and District 3 is 32, and then only District 4, which is about the same as it was before, which was 17%. District 4 is at 19%.
Yep. And again, I would also, kind of just,
Under option one.
Under option one.
and maybe in an ideal world, we have a little bit higher diversity in District 4, but again, that's reflective of our geography. A lot of District 4 is rural land. If we want to create compact districts, we're not going to have that housing density that we see in the northern parts of our city. So I think the numbers you gave are, in my opinion, pretty good numbers, yep.
Additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll place it to a vote.
All right.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. So we're bringing forth option one with the tweaks, tweaks, adjustments. All right.
So just to recap, we just approved that we like option one, generally speaking. We may like to see it a little few more options
Yes.
in option one, but it's the basic outline of what we're going with.
That's
You know.
correct. So we would like to discuss this further at this time, or should we?
I guess,
Go ahead, yes. I'm
oh
sorry.
no, I didn't know if you're asking me or not.
I am.
I guess as much as we can get done today, I mean, I guess is the assumption, is the goal to approve something today or send staff to do tweaks and then reconvene tomorrow?
Well, I think we didn't have, I think we need to see a final map of the tweaks that we just discussed and bring that forward tomorrow. At tomorrow's set meeting. Chad, go ahead.
I would say before we get to that point, are there other tweaks we would like to see to option one? And then what I would propose potentially is a conversation, we could take a brief recess and have a conversation with Wade from a timing perspective. Depending on the amount of tweaks available, there could be at least some preliminary information that could be shared yet today on what the impacts are. And then we could kind of game plan from there as to whether or not we meet again tomorrow, if that sounds agreeable to you,
Sure.
Wade, in particular.
Okay.
What time does this meeting have to end today?
Is it 5:30?
5:30, I believe.
Oh, fine.
I can check quickly here. Yeah, I had it up.
So again, I think if there are any other modifications this group would like to see to option one, besides what we've already talked about with Ward 7 and 8, down in that, that Lacey Road corridor between Fish Hatchery and Osmondson, we'd certainly be willing to entertain those.
Is there additional discussion regarding other tweaks? Than what we've already discussed, I guess is what I'm saying. Would you suggest a short recess?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
say if we take a recess, Wade and I and Tracy could convene and kind of see what the strategy from here could be.
Okay. We have, I don't know if Scott or, do we need a motion? Yes, I just want to make sure somebody is here with us to recess.
I'll make the motion.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Musser, second.
Okay. We are recessing. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, a discussion further. No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. We will recess for 15 minutes. Okay, do we have a motion to reconvene the redistricting committee of October 6th?
So moved, Musser.
Okay. Do we have any discussion? No? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the motion carries. I'm going to turn this over to Chad Brecklin, our city administrator, and let him explain some of the boundary changes that we talked about and some slight additional options as well.
Thank you, Chair Udell. Do you mind if I walk to the map and I can kind of walk this group through some of the staff considerations as we dug a little bit deeper into the proposed modifications with option one?
Great idea, yes.
Thank you, sir. So as staff was taking a look at the two proposed changes that have been identified already, this one here, we don't see any sorts of objections with doing. So we'll look for the enhanced option one to include this. This here, we are good with doing a modification here, but the one thing that we have identified in staff conversations is the school district boundaries. So if you look at your school district map that is there, as well as your current Aldermatic district and ward map from 2010, if you could grab both of those items, I can help visualize what staff was discussing here. So if everybody has their school district boundary map and their 2010, or basically the current Aldermatic districts and wards, the issue that we have here is that if we use Osmondson Road as the center line, that creates a situation where we will effectively add another ballot style into the mix, because Verona School District would then would be kind of bifurcated a bit with this Osmondson Road. So what staff would ask this body to consider for this particular area is to basically continue to use the existing Ward 7 boundaries, which does take into consideration the Verona School District boundary. So basically, if you look at your current Aldermatic district map, the west boundary and south boundary of Ward 7 would be maintained in that scenario. Everybody okay with that? Anybody got any questions on that at all? We're okay? If so, I'll move on to the next area that we'd like this body to consider. So we also decided to take another look at this particular area and make sure that we did what we could to minimize any disruption to neighborhoods in this area. And we also, if you would take out your existing Aldermatic ward and district, felt that the committee should consider keeping the same boundary for Ward 5 here on the proposed map as it is in the existing Aldermatic district map. So what that would do is that would basically bring this line kind of along like this. So a bit more of District 2 would be pushed into District 1, but that is already what is part of current day Ward 5. Everybody understand that potential discussion point? Any questions on that one at all?
Wait. Kind of redraw that line 5. I can't quite see it from here, so just point to it again.
Yep, so
where the line would be.
The existing Ward 5 comes along this way, right here.
Okay.
So that is, we would like the commission to consider keeping Ward 5 intact as it is today. It would just still move to District 1 from District 2, as option 1 indicates. Did that help clarify that?
Yep, that's good.
Okay.
All right.
So there's two more areas we'd like the commission to consider. This one right here. So in our current district and ward map, Fish Hatchery Road actually serves as the divider for that. In this proposed option, Mickelson Parkway was included, and we do think that it may be a better long-term option to keep this boundary as it was on Fish Hatchery Road and keep Mickelson within District 2 as it is now as well. Any questions on that one? Go ahead.
I'm just curious, why was it initially not included? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, that's absolutely a fair question. I don't want to speak for Wade, but I got an idea why it was.
Again, my underlying motivation in these draft maps was equal population distribution, so that it was a result of that.
Yeah. So obviously these modifications and plus the one more that I'll talk about are going to potentially throw, that ultimate goal of 7750 in each Aldermatic district a little bit farther off. But as this group has talked about, we certainly are likely to be well within our legal boundaries of doing so. And then the final area we'd like this committee to consider adjustments to is this area here. We'd like you to consider if this should be included in Ward 14 instead of having that boundary kind of create these three or four streets that are not part of this adjoining area. Any questions on the boundary adjustments that we would like the committee to consider?
Just qualify those 3 streets that would be moved to 14?
Yes, these
name
three.
of them?
Yep, these 3 right here.
Do we know what they are?
I think they're going to be Bud's Drive or Smoky Trail, I think is one of them. Part of, I don't know if part of Nobel. Part of Nobel would be here.
At east side.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yep. We can certainly grab them off the map for the purposes of the conversation. My geographical skills aren't what they used to be.
And that's a pretty small number of people, presumably.
Yeah, these are all predominantly single-family homes, so I don't think the population change will be too significant there.
Chad, I think I know which ones they are, and you're pretty good. Is Bob's Drive, Smoky Trail, Mary Lane, and then part of it is Fahey Glen, actually.
Okay, yeah. So that summarizes the staff conversation as it relates to the modifications of option 1. And I think for the purposes of the group conversation, we could work our way just down the map, and you guys could converse and discuss, ask questions about each of the potential areas of modification to this option and determine if you are comfortable with leaving them as they have been drawn here, or if you would like to see staff modify them for further consideration.
And with that, I would like to entertain a motion, if somebody would.
So you need a motion, obviously, just to begin the conversation. Is that correct,
That's
Randy?
correct, yes.
Okay.
So moved. I move that we begin conversing about the options to option 1.
Okay, very good. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Well, I second the motion.
Sorry, second by Greg.
So now we can have discussion.
Now we can have discussion, yes.
So we'll start with this here with consideration of this group to keep the existing Ward 5 boundaries in place. Ward 5 would obviously grow a bit based upon this as I drew this line right down here and still be in District 1.
So those are single-family dwellings as well, so what's any concept of the number of people that get moved?
I would hate to speculate a guess on there. I mean, I would guess we're probably talking a couple hundred at least. And I think what we can do if the group, if the committee is interested in it, we can continue to obviously have option 1. And depending on what the group would like to see, we could take the overnight hours and tomorrow morning to create option 1A that would look with the adjusted boundaries that the group would like to make.
So basically it means that the former District 5 in its entire, or Ward 5 in its entirety moves to District 1.
Correct,
That's what
yep.
you're saying.
Yep.
And then if you're going to do like maybe an option 1A, if you could do again these numbers with the diversity
Yes.
And so we can kind of get an idea of, you know, what this is all going to shape up looking like.
Yep, absolutely. We certainly will do that.
Are you therefore concluding there'll be a meeting tomorrow? Is that,
Yes, that is where we're headed, and here's why. I think that it would be best, obviously, to talk about potentially, you know, an option 1A. It would give you guys the overnight time frame to kind of think about the modifications that were discussed and make sure that you're comfortable with those as you consider option 1 and option 1A. And then, of course, tomorrow we'll be able to also share the demographic information with you to, again, confirm that you're okay with whatever options are currently on the table for discussion tomorrow. Does that sound reasonable? The challenge would be is there certainly wouldn't be time tonight to put those modifications into place and then also present the demographic data. So that's the challenge we have in order to proceed.
So just to clarify, with the current option 1, the school lines do change. Is that what I heard you saying earlier? That currently with this option, if we were to go with option 1, the school lines are going to change for Verona and Madison, correct?
The school district boundaries do not
yeah.
change. It just creates a different ballot style. So that's what this does currently, is it creates a separate ballot style.
Different ballot style, and it just creates a lot more work actually for the city clerk, if you want to.
Right, and just, the less ballot styles, the less voter confusion there is.
Yeah.
Were those residents that we're moving from District 2 to District 1, will, and this is where I think the city administrator got to help me, Tracy, those individuals would pick up the following: a different polling place. They would pick up, and if I'm looking at this data by ward, we would be moving about 1,200 residents from District 2 to District 1. And that representation is about 74% white, 5% black, and about 7% Hispanic at the nuance level, not necessarily the broader diversity level. So when you do option 1A, and that's why I like 1A, it'll give me the opportunity to see what's going to change. You know, and I'm assuming you'll have these same numbers for me tomorrow by ethnic group, not necessarily the broader diversity group, right?
We'll have the same numbers for option 1A that you have for 1.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
So let me now project, because we old math teachers used to say there's two things about numbers. If I think about moving 1,200 people, and that representation that I just mentioned, 900 of those are white, 88 are Hispanic, 62 are black, it's going to have very minimal effect on the overall diversity for District 1. However, we need to see what that is. But having said that, I don't see where that changed that conceptual model of stacking, whether we're moving people in a way that's going to change their community interests or those other variables that we try to maintain as far as so forth. So, okay, I'm looking forward to seeing 1A.
So any other conversation regarding this area?
Hearing none, shall we place it to a vote?
Or are we better off covering all areas
You
and
want-
then summarizing at the end for vote? How does that sound?
That sounds fine.
Okay. So next, let's talk about this area with Ward 7. The staff conversation was such that we should keep the existing boundaries of Ward 7 in order to better align with the Verona Area School District. So that would basically then, if you pull out your existing district map, you can see where Ward 7 is. So the boundaries would basically stay the same there. So that would then incorporate basically this line here and in here for the most part. So this chunk would obviously come in as the committee has already discussed. Any questions or discussion on that particular portion of it? Nothing? Okay. This one we've already talked about. We're gonna look to incorporate this corner. So basically, the existing Ward 8 would look similar on the south and east sides. The other thing with this Ward 8 is staff is wishing for the committee to consider having Fish Hatchery Road serve as the boundary for Ward 8 versus Mickelson Parkway, which is also consistent with current Ward 8. Any questions on either of those two Ward 8 related matters or discussion? All right, and then the last one would be this neighborhood. Mayor Richardson was kind enough to list the streets that's here. So the consideration would be is to incorporate this neighborhood into Ward 14, and i.e. into District 3 then. Any questions or discussion, comments on that concept?
I just have one question. There's a lot of development happening right there. I think that's Fahey Fields.
Yeah.
And so is it kind of that whole area? Is it just, there's a lot going in that area. So I'm just curious if you could elaborate on if it's, I think there's more than what's just showing on. In fact, there's a bunch of streets that aren't showing on there.
Sure.
Along Lacey, the street I live on isn't. That's projected to go to District 4. But I know there's a lot more happening in that area. Is that whole area? Are you suggesting the whole area or just a section?
So we could, based on committee conversation and what census tract boundaries look like, I mean, that's obviously going to be part of it as well. There is obviously planned development for this general vicinity here, which, you know, that's not something that we necessarily are considering for the purpose of this because it's not as concrete as the absorption of the town of Madison. But if we do add this in here, then obviously in the 2030 redistricting process, it's likely that this is going to need some modification, clearly, because there will likely be, you know, much more development here, and we probably wouldn't want that development split across two wards unless there's some logical boundary to do so. But again, I think for the purposes of this process, we could have Wade look at the census tracts to see what that looks like. Is that fair, Wade?
Sure.
So that if this does develop over the 10-year period, that we're still not creating confusion for where residents might live. Tracy, go ahead.
Yeah, and if I can just point out, Ward 14, if you look at the original ward map from the 2010 census, it shows that Ward 14 actually extends all the way to, is that Cyene Road?
Cyene Road, yeah.
So, you know, we could extend that whole Ward 14 over, which would encompass that area there that already is developed.
Sure. That could be
is an
something the
option as
committee
well.
would like to see the map preferably look like
So
this
there really
versus
wouldn't be
carve
any,
this out.
yep, and there wouldn't be any change really to 14.
I just know there's a lot of development in that area that doesn't show, like Waterford Glen is not on that map, McGaw and Dahmers isn't, and so there's neighborhoods in that blue section, but maybe Waterford Glen is where the divide is, you know, and you keep, but I know it ends up going south now to, I think Mike connects.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you need the whole block, but I think that there's a lot of extra development that's happening in that area, so just
Yeah,
something to think about.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Yeah, I think as Wade starts to look at the software and the application, it'll probably kind of and also look at what it does for the population numbers. I'm suspecting he's going to find, you know, where there may be a logical break that would include this, whether it's the whole corner as current Ward 14 is, or whether it's something a little smaller.
May I point out something? There is in that area in Ward 14, there is a part that is in Madison School District, and there's a part that's in Oregon School District.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that is a good break. Maybe Wade could look at that and see if that's something that, 'cause I mean, that might be more beneficial in creating the district.
And I can speak to that. Is that okay, Chair?
Yes.
So if you look at the current map of 10, and you see where Ward 14 is. So Ward 14 is already split in between those two school districts. So it's not creating any type of different ballot styles than we already have had for the past decade, so.
Other discussion or comments on this Ward 14 area? So I think, Chair Udell, where we would be at now is if there is a motion that would request staff to modify the boundaries of Ward 5, consistent with, in option 1, consistent with current Ward 5. The boundaries in option 1, Ward 7, with current Ward 7. The option of Ward 8 would align mostly with existing Ward 8, particularly on the south and the east. And then, which would also incorporate the Mickelson area, and then authorize staff to evaluate incorporation of this area in a logical fashion for presentation. And if anybody in this group would like to exclude one of those things, you should certainly mention that. Otherwise, if you are comfortable with how that general thing has been explained, those recommendations, we could go ahead and work on the overnight hours to draw up option 1A. Does that make sense, Chair Udell?
Yes, it makes sense. Moving forward, is there I'm requesting a motion here, correct? Yep.
Good friendly demotion.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry. You could do two things. You could either friendly the motion to do that, or you could withdraw the motion, do a new motion. There's two ways of doing it. Probably just friendly the original motion to do what you've discussed is probably easiest.
And anybody can place that friendly motion?
You just ask the person who made the motion, who seconded, if they're okay with that. If they're
Gene,
I approve the friendliness of the change to the motion.
okay, and a second? We have a second from Greg Jones. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so what we will do then is Wade will work at redrawing option 1A, and then also including the demographic information for the group to consider. Good?
Very good. And there's one other item that we'd like to speak to is the polling locations, and City Administrator Chad Brecklin will speak to that as well. The floor is yours, Chad.
Thank you, Chair. So the other thing we would like also to discuss tomorrow, in addition to option 1 and option 1A, is the polling locations. And if you look at your current Aldermatic district wards, district and wards map, you can see that the current 4 polling locations are noted on that map. So we currently have District 1 polling location in Little John's, 5302 Verona Road. Currently, District 2 is in Fire Station 1 at 5791 Lacey Road. District 3 is at Wyndham Garden, the hotel at 2969 Cahill, Maine. And then the District 4 polling location is at the community center next door, 5510 Lacey Road. So what staff has discussed at this point in time is adding the polling locations that as they exist today into both option 1 and option 1A for consideration by this group. However, we would look to modify the districts that vote at those particular polling locations. District 1 would stay the same. The District 2 polling location currently at Fire Station 1 would become the District 4 polling location. The District 3 polling location at Wyndham Garden would become the District 2 polling location. And then the current District 4 polling location at the community center would become the District 3 polling location. So that would place all of the polling locations within their respective Aldermatic district. The other thing related to polling locations is this may be, and this is obviously ultimately a council call and priority. It may make sense to keep the polling locations as they are with the change in which districts vote at them for the purposes of the spring election. And then the council could consider either adding or moving polling locations after the spring election and in time for the fall election to give adequate notice. So the mayor may have some thoughts.
Yeah, I guess, I think it does make probably sense to have any changes to polling locations be with the fall elections next year. And that's mainly because in District 1, we're using Little John's. They've been great, but they are developing it, they are remodeling it, and it becomes a restaurant, essentially, which is problematic. And the county bought our old fire station that used to be the polling location, and they have indicated that starting in the fall election that we'll be able to use that again as a polling location. And I think that there's less confusion if people are moving polling locations than moving polling locations. I think the other thing that we want to talk about is, does it make sense to have a polling location at the Wyndham Garden Hotel? It's also a business. There's been hotels that have struggled through COVID. What happens if the hotel closes down? And that's why we generally try to avoid that, but it's also a challenge because you also want that where people live. There's not a lot of great options right now, but we might have better options in the future. That's something to consider, and I think something that we need to continue looking at. And then the other thing would just be, do we want to keep a polling location at a operating fire station? That's another thing that we never thought of in the past, but now there's a pandemic, and you're bringing the public to the fire station. Do you want to do that and expose your fire department and EMS personnel to that? We might not be able to avoid that, but something to at least consider anyway. And it might be that we don't use District 2, Fire Station 1. I'm sorry, we don't use Fire Station 1. No, I'm sorry. We don't use the fire station on the east side anymore, but maybe we do need to use the one over here on the east side just to have something further east. Yeah, maybe there's just no other option. I think staff has brainstormed a few potential options, but certainly open to other ideas people have. But I think the ones that are in businesses can be problematic and can be concerning, but it's challenging because you want to have something on North Fishhatchee Road, for example. We want to have something on the west side of Verona Road, which is why we want to keep Little John's until we can use their old polling location. I think there's reasons for that. We don't have many options on the east side of the city. That's just always going to be a challenge for a while, I think, but just more things to think about and for discussion to have, and that's where that doesn't have to be decided tomorrow. This group can meet, in the next couple of weeks to talk more about polling locations. I do think waiting until November might make more sense to do changes just so that all changes happen at once and you don't make some changes in spring and then maybe again in the fall. So just more discussion for all of you tomorrow.
I have a question. I'm
ahead.
not sure who it should be directed to, but are we able to maybe use like community schools or schools, or is that out of the question? Because that seems like a place that, the community could go to vote.
Medicine does it, I know, but it can be problematic. The schools would have to okay it, and especially with it now after COVID, they're less likely to want to do that because, again, you're bringing hundreds of people to where you have kids, and if in the middle of a pandemic. So there's always things like that that cause issues. I know we've talked about, are there churches? That's one that sometimes is used as well. That might be an option. Public facilities are always the best. We've talked about maybe the Public Works facility up Fitchburg Road. It's not very close to anyone, but that could be an option. I don't know if the upstairs of the library would be an option, but then is that confusing? Because you have the library and the community center right here. That creates confusion as well. But again, you still don't have much on the east part of the city. And we're not aware of anything in the town of Madison, but maybe it makes sense to have something over there as well. There's not good answers, but I think we have some really good ones. Community center is a fantastic option. The original fire station on Lacey Road is a fantastic option. So we've got two fantastic options. Then it's just a matter of, actually, I think when we can use the county building, the old fire station in District 1, that was a polling place. I think that's a third great location. So I think we really have three great locations. It's where's that fourth one and where does it make sense? And you want something on North Fitchburg Road, I think, but there's not great options up there. That's the challenge, at least at this point in time.
Are there standards for how big a population should be served per polling place?
Go ahead, Tracy.
Yep, I can speak to that. There are certain criteria that need to be met versus how many registered voters a building can accommodate. And when it comes to deciding a polling location, and Greg, you can attest to this because you were involved in finding Little John's, but there is a checklist that needs to be gone through to make sure that a polling location meets all that criteria, and then that's submitted to the Wisconsin Elections Commission for their ultimate approval as well. So there is a vetting system when it does come to.
4 is enough for a city of 30,000.
At this time, I believe so.
That sounded like a tentative answer.
It's a challenge, I think. Could we do 5? Yes, I think.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I think.
When you go by a population, you can't really go by a population. You have to go by registered voters.
And then you also now have a lot more people are voting by mail or absentee, so that decreases your need for in-person balloting. So that's a big piece of it. And I think that I was going to make another point, but I think the big thing is, where are people voting as much? Oh, and sorry, and if you had a fifth polling location, you need people to work it. And so that's the other challenge, is finding enough people to work. That was a big concern during COVID. A lot of our volunteers decided, I don't want to do this, I'm afraid. We were able to get enough people to volunteer to do that, but that would just be the other concern, is can you staff 5 locations as well?
All right. Hearing no further discussion, I will move on to item 8 of the agenda. Just confirming the future meeting of tomorrow, Thursday, October 7th, 2021 at 3 p.m. This committee will meet. And are we meeting in chambers again? We are meeting in this room, City Council chambers. Item 9, announcements. I have none. I don't know if anybody else. Mayor Richardson. Moving on to item 10. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Messer. Second.
Second. Discussion, hearing none. Those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, we are adjourned at 5:14 p.m. Thank you.